So I finally installed the PRL high volume intake for my FL5, and there's a lot of videos on the sound, but there's not a video that I saw on intake temperatures. And I think, yes, you buy the intake mostly for the sound. Some of you may be buying it because you're trying to make over 500 horsepower and you really need a good intake that's going to be able to draw in a lot of air, and you want the coolest air possible. But the second part to that, as I said, is the coolest air possible. So I noticed that with this intake, it definitely drops air intake temperatures faster than the stock airbox and lower than the stock airbox. So on my old car, or I should say on my old intake, I was getting intake temperatures that were right around between like 110 to 125 degrees while driving. With this intake, I've noticed that the intake temperatures, yes, they can climb when the car is sitting still, but they drop as soon as you start driving. As you see, I've had this up the entire time doing a screen record from Honda, and you can see all the air temperatures, and they drop pretty quick. It's 90 degrees outside, and even though it's 90 degrees, air intake temperatures are still staying quite low. 105 degrees is really not bad, and we've only been driving for a few minutes. So honestly, I shot this video earlier, and I had intake temperatures while it was 92 degrees outside. My intake temperatures were right between 95 and 98 degrees. Unfortunately, I lost all that footage, so I have to shoot it again. But you can see that when we started this drive, we had air intake temperatures that were in the 140s, and they're already down to 105. So I feel that with the PRL intake, when you're pulling in air directly into that little plastic box that's up there, it doesn't have to travel through all the pipes or anything, and so it doesn't have time to pull off the heat from that plastic, or even just sitting in the engine bay. As you're moving air over and into the intake, it immediately goes into the filter and just goes right into the charge pipes. With the old intake, it kind of had to follow a path where it came down, went up, through the filter, and then across. And even that is just a restriction, and it's longer that air is sitting in a hot piece of plastic, and that will raise your intake temperatures. You'll see they're still going down. I am curious on the other intakes though. I don't have any Venturi intake, or I know there's a few other intakes on the market, but if you have one of those intakes, let me know what your intake temperatures are like. I'm really curious to see how they compare. I know a lot of them are kind of similar design, where it's like the open vent right up under the hood, and so you'd think they'd be pretty similar, but I know with some of them being carbon fiber, some of them being plastic, it may affect the intake temperatures. So I'd be really curious if you guys left a comment if you have a different intake, or even the same intake, just to let me know what your experiences were. So we did a pull there, and look at that. My intake temps actually went down. And I mean, it makes sense. More air flowing, doesn't have as much time to sit there and heat up. Makes a lot of sense. But it's really cool to see that instead of the intake temps staying the same, they're actually being lowered. Lower intake temps, of course, means more horsepower. The colder the air is, the more dense it is. So you want the coldest air possible flowing into the engine, especially since when it goes through a turbocharger, it's going to heat up quite a bit. And that's why the air intake temperature for after the intercooler is a lot higher than the air that's coming into the engine. The air that's coming out of the turbocharger can be over 400 degrees. And so that intercooler is doing a pretty good job if it's bringing it back down to 130. But I'm going to sit here for a second. You may see the temperature rise a little bit. Then as soon as we get going again and flow air through it, drops immediately. Look at that. All right, so this is going to be the ultimate test. So the car's been sitting on for about 5 minutes. It is 90 degrees outside. The intake temperature at the air filter is 147 degrees. As you can see, the air intake temperature after the intercooler is 140 degrees. So I'm going to go for a drive and we're going to see how fast that number drops. We're already down to 134. We're going maybe 10 miles an hour. And if we speed up, 131, 127. Notice the air temperature after the intercooler is going down as well. PRL really did a good job with this intake. We are already down to 116 degrees. So if you guys haven't subscribed already, please subscribe. It really helps out the channel. If you don't want to subscribe, please just leave a like on the video. And I'll see you guys in the next one.